Friends, we have gathered here to praise God. As we celebrate the life of Art Gardiner, we come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. May God grant us grace that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, in death, resurrection. Let us pray together. Eternal God, we praise you for the great company of all those who have finished their journey. We praise you for those dear to us whom we name in our heart before you. Especially this morning, we praise you for Art, whom you have graciously received into your presence. To all of these, grant your peace. Let perpetual light shine upon them, and help us so to believe where he have not seen, that your presence may lead us through our years, and bring us at last with them into the joy of your home, and made with the hands by eternal in heaven. Through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Now we'll be singing together, How Great Thou Art. What a title.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite, but this song was written simply for Art. How great you art. Yeah, we know that. We'll sing this one first and the second verse.
Oh
Do I have to sign? Yeah.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Luke. I'm the current music director of this church. Of the past 3 years, I knew Mr. Art, as I like to call him. Mr. Art for only the 3 years. He always brought a smile to my face. That's really what I can say about him. And as a current working music educator, with a primary instrument in voice, if I can sing half as good as Art Gardiner in my 80s, I'll be very lucky. And this is one of his favorites, so we're performing that for you now. Enjoy it.
To the Lord, take
I have made a serious decision today not to preach. For two reasons. Because I just preached this morning. And I know that none of you expect me to give another sermon. And also the other reason that I decided not to preach is we have many people who lined up to speak today. So I will not give any sermon today, but let me just give just a few minutes to share my personal story associated with art. All I can say about art, he has finished his journey completely and successfully. He has done everything he was supposed to do. We celebrated 50 years anniversary of our church, 2016, 2 years ago. Art Gardiner was a founding member. Yeah, you know that. He was a founding member of this congregation. And he celebrated 50 years. He sang in the choir, he sang a solo, and it was really great. He finished 50 years journey with this congregation. And also, every year in December, Christmas time, we expect Art Gardiner sing O Holy Night. Yes, that's the time. O Holy Night. But last couple of years, he was kind of hesitant to sing the songs. I just pushed him. Art, no way. You have to sing. You gotta sing. As long as you breathe, you gotta sing. So I'm so glad that he sang his last O Holy Night December last year. Maybe not the best performance he did, but he did. You can listen and hear the music on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, just type the word Art Gardiner singing medley. And you can hear 20-minute non-stop singing. Good way to do it. Please do it. Thank you for Art Olson here sitting at the front. He does that job. He downloaded the music and he uploaded all the artist's music on YouTube. Thank you so much. So I want to share with you just one more story. I remember the last time that I met him. He was in the hospital. And the Kim was there. Just a few days before he passed away. Art was weak. And before I left, the Kim was outside. And I had a short conversation. That was the last conversation with him. I talked to him, Art, you have a wonderful, wonderful voice. And you know what? You have been a great, great role model. And he said, really? How? I have 3 children. My son loved to sing. Unfortunately, he's not good at singing. You know what, Art? Whenever you sing at church, my kids, when they back home, and they say it all the time, admiring you, and how great you are, Art. And they say, what kind of a man in that age sing like that? That's right, Art, you are a great, great role model. That's right. It's not only for my children, for all the people who have known him. He was a great role model in many different ways, and he inspired the people. Through his life, friendship, he was a beautiful, wonderful, deep, soft voice. Okay, I promise I'm not going to preach. Let me pass the microphone. We have Mike, Rolf, Jim, and Walt. Mike?
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for coming out this afternoon. On behalf of my sister Kim, my cousin Richard, and his son Josh, and actually our whole family, we just really appreciate the love that I think is in the room and for the respect that people had for art. Because, you know, everyone loves art. And that's going to be kind of the theme that I want to follow this morning or this afternoon. I met Art about 66 years ago in Dearborn, Michigan. You know, he was brought up the youngest of three brothers in an Irish immigrant family, lived in Dearborn. The family plowed their way through the Depression and on into the 40s. His two older brothers went into the military, but Art was too young for World War II, which was probably just as well for him because Art was really a lover, not a fighter, and so it worked well in his favor. On into the 50s, even with the Korean conflict going on, and Art was probably of age to go to the military. He was newly married to Marion, and they had a young infant. So he skipped going into the military again, which once again was a good deal for him, just being the kind of loving, warm soul that he was. Art and Marion were both inclined towards the arts. Window displays, interior design, color schemes, that was really their forte. They met while working downtown Detroit for a couple different companies doing display work for the most part. Art spent several years at a furniture store in downtown Detroit doing mostly display work and color coordination and that kind of thing. And maybe some folks in this room, I know every friend or relative we had, Art or Marion probably had a little bit to do with decorating their house because that's just what they did. And as we all know, everyone loves art, so it worked out really well. The music, it's already been brought by Pastor Joe that everyone waited to listen to Art sing. And to be honest with you, that's been true for the last 75 years. Some of my earliest memories as a child was driving in our yellow 1955 Chevy sedan, because Marion's favorite color was yellow, so we would be driving anywhere we went. I'd be learning the words to When the Saints Go Marching In, or She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain. And I mean, it didn't matter if it was a 20-minute drive or a 3-hour drive. We'd sing the whole way. We never listened to the radio, we just sang songs. So that was a pretty important part of my childhood. But they sang a lot at church, and they sang a lot at parties. And they basically sang everywhere they went and with everything they did. And they could harmonize too. I'm sitting next to my sister or standing next to her singing the hymns, and she's harmonizing just like my mom and dad used to harmonize on every song. I mean, you couldn't just sing it straight, you had to harmonize. So that was pretty good. Weddings. There's probably too many to count, but I'm sure that every wedding of every person we ever knew growing up, my dad sang at their wedding. I mean, family, friends, he'd go on the road to sing. I mean, everybody loves art, and they wanted Art to sing at their wedding. So that was a pretty big part of his life. As a teenager, he actually sang in the men's glee club on WJR radio in Detroit, and really kind of cut his teeth on performing, I guess, if you will, the art of singing. So like I said, he sang at every wedding, they sang every week at church, they sang at every party. That's a lot of singing. And of course, many of the are familiar with his singing with the men's quartet, and he was probably most proud of that, especially in his later years, and would send me a disc every now and then of the latest of what he was doing. So that really meant a lot to him, and I'm really glad that he was part of that with you guys. This was going to be kind of corny, but because I heard the choir warming up a little before, but every Sunday morning in the house where I grew up, it sounded something like this. La 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 la. No, that's too low. La 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 la. La 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 la. And that would go on for 20 or 30 minutes as Art warmed up for whatever he was singing that morning, or before, whatever event we went to. But beyond music, Art also loved gardening. I think most people that know him can see some of the things that he did around the church, and once again probably did at just about everybody's house that we know. I actually believe that pruning was his favorite pastime. As a kid, I can remember traveling. It didn't matter if we were going to visit friends or relatives. We'd get somewhere, and dang, if by this afternoon on a sunny day, somehow Art would end up with pruners or hedge trimmers in his hands, and he'd be working in the backyard, pruning some of these bushes, It's like, and it was just normal, because everybody loved Art, and it worked out really well. I live in Oregon, and when Art and Marion would come and visit us, it really didn't take too long before a pair of hand pruners was in his hand, and he would that would be what he'd do all afternoon and totally enjoy it. And so that was great. Art was also a businessman. He a traveling sales job in the 60s actually took him all over the Midwest and down as far as Houston and Dallas for the lines that he represented. In fact, that's what brought the Gardiner family from Michigan to Chicagoland in 1966. He had a chance to own his own business, and he jumped at it and drug us away from everything that we knew to resettle ourselves in Arlington Heights. And I just have to say that, Art was a good businessman. He wasn't necessarily a great businessman, but he was good. But I will say that he was probably the best owner of a business that anybody could work for. He treated every employee as if they were family. And everybody loved Art. You know, then there's Church of the Incarnation. When our family moved to Arlington Heights in '66, one of the first decisions that needed to be made was what church were we going to go to. We had been multi-generational at a Methodist church in the Detroit area. So first we went to the big Methodist church in Arlington Heights, and it didn't quite have the same feel that we were used to at the church that we had been going to. And so after a couple of weeks, Art suggested that we try a new Methodist church that was just starting up and was meeting in an elementary school. Now, that sounded a little odd to me, but you know, we all said, sure, let's give it a try. And lo and behold, we went to the church. I actually saw a couple kids that were going to the same high school that I was going to, and we decided that that was probably going to be the best thing for us. And my parents jumped in with both feet, as most of you know that know them. So that was our introduction to Church of the Incarnation. Now, I know many of you here today know the story way better than I do, so I'm not going to say anything more about the Incarnation, but I will say that both my mom and my dad were never more dedicated to anything than they were to their church. And it was such an important part of their life, and all of you were. I can only hope that the church keeps Art's memory alive by maintaining the welcoming environment that he strived for years to create. As I reflect back on my dad's life, I mostly see all the family, friends, casual acquaintances, and stray souls that he and my mom helped. I mean, there was virtually no one that they wouldn't reach out a hand to help and to befriend, and they had way more friends than I've ever had in my life. And in fact, it was almost intimidating to come visit them because they knew everybody. And I thought that was just really one of their greatest traits. So I want to thank everyone for your comfort and for your prayers for all our family. You know, we've been growing a larger contingency of the Gardiners out in Oregon, and my wife and my two daughters and their husbands and Art's 4 great-grandkids weren't able to make the service today, but we've heard from a lot of people, and we appreciate, once again, all your thoughts and prayers. One last line I'd like to say that's maybe not that appropriate, but from Art's Irish household, a classic line was usually said, "May you be in heaven a half hour before the devil knows you're dead." Thank you very much.
Art was not only a gentleman, but he was a very gentle man. He was always an excellent dresser in coordinating colors and good taste. He even wore very appropriate matching socks. His perfectly trimmed white hair completed the gentleman as he was and will always be in my mind. When Linda and I joined the Incarnation, he was a lay leader at the time, one of the pillars of the church. Everyone feel it. Superlatives were not unusual when Art's name was mentioned. His life was full of passion, caring, creativity, and he was always charming. One only has to picture him when he and Miriam decorated the altar, took care of flowers, and plants inside and outside. All of these things were done with love and lots of hard work, often without extra help. He created the garden across from the main entrance of the church. His creation is a second sanctuary in nature. When he trimmed the lawn around the garden, he always made sure the grass clippings ended up away from the bushes and the flowers. One time after choir rehearsal, as we walked out, he mentioned that I had missed the spot when I cut the lawn earlier that day. I offered to cut that area so the lawn would look perfect. He moved his car so his headlights would illuminate the lawn. It's simply amazing how well one gets to know one another simply by communicating. Art had a life experience that was shared with many of us. I was often surprised that our paths were somewhat similar. I worked in Dearborn, Michigan at the time that Art was living there with his family. Linda and I moved from the area in 1963 down to Chicago. Gardner's moved in 1966. That January 1967, there was a lot of snow. 27 inches. Art arrived home from his Partridge store. He blamed Mike for not having completely cleared the driveway, especially since Art had helped all his employees to arrive home very safely. Little did Art know that Mike had been shoveling tireless all afternoon. Very center street. Art had friends and business associates we both knew. He was often asked to help set up displays in new stores. His time in Hudson's and Detroit gave him the boost his talent needed. This is also where he met Meredith. Art always appreciated a phone call. He never forgot to ask, "How is the family?" and thank you for the call. And usually ended the conversation with, "Do me a favor and give your wife a hug for me." Wherever we lived, when we found people who had spent the last part of their lives, or part of their lives in Michigan, they were always friendly. Art, you are very special. You too are a great Michigander. I will really miss you.
Hi, my name is Jim Zavansky. Known Art for an awful long time. And Betsy, the prelude played Bach C major prelude, is kind of reminded me of Art in its simplicity and its beauty. And it's just a magnificent piece, and Art was a magnificent human being. I guess you know what Art has done around the church, but everything that he and Marion did, they call on the quiet. They didn't boast about it. They didn't say, "Hey, look what I did." But they were dedicated, and I believe that's what our Lord asks us to be like. I've never heard anybody say anything negative about Art. And I never heard Art say anything negative about anybody else, unless I instigated him. But on his own, he was great. And toward the end, Art, after he lost Marion, we started playing, several of us started playing cards every Tuesday. And we played silly kids games. Dominoes, hearts, spades, and And it got to be, as the time went by, it got to be pretty funny. As an example, we could never figure out who just dealt the last hand. How do you play this game? You know, a long time ago, I got Art a card, a greeting card, and I've never remembered to give it to him. But I found it now, and it's 3 guys walking on, older, like us, walking on the beach. The first one says, "It's windy today." The second guy says, "No, it's Thursday." And the third guy says, "So am I, let's have a beer." But Art was such a mentor to me and an example, as Pastor Go had said. He was a perfect example of a Christian as far as I'm concerned. And I just love the guy.
I'm Walt Jones. Art and I go way back. In fact, Art and Barry and I go way back. Art is just a friend of mine, and he was the happy Irishman, always happy and go-lucky. And Marion was always such an important part of that family and our life and our time here at our incarnation. And it's hard to remember one of them without thinking of the other and seeing them as a couple. I have so many wonderful memories of our time here. They were always what I call the quiet workers, and it's the same as you were saying. They didn't look to be thanked or anything. They saw something that needed to be done, and they did it. They just jumped in wherever they were needed. This church has always been known for its music, and that reputation was built, I think, by Art and Mary. When the church was first started, it needed a choir director. Art was a great vocalist, but he'd never directed a choir. I'm sure he knew nothing about how to go about doing that. And selecting music for the service and everything would have been such a difficult job. He just jumped in, very reluctantly. He told me he was very reluctant, but he jumped in and said, "I'll do it." And what a fantastic choir he built. It was great. He did some of the best work, very difficult numbers, and he was the one who put those together. It was just wonderful singing in his choir. And Carol and I have just totally enjoyed working with the 4 Gospels. Every time we sang, when we got done, Art would always thank Carol for her compliment. It was just great. She told me to make sure I mentioned that because it was so important to her. Carol and I, when we first came into the church, Carol and I worked on the worship committee. And Art and Marion were the chairmen of that committee, and the meetings were fun. They were just a joy to go to the meetings. And we would work at those meetings. We did a lot. I remember the banners that were created in those meetings used to hang up here. There was a different one. I miss those now because they always had a different message, and they were beautiful, and they added to the service. And Marion was the one with the women who basically created all of those. And Art and Marion, but Art, I think, was the main one, was responsible for decorating this sanctuary every Sunday. And I think the framework was always there. I don't remember, but they would hang pieces of cloth. I said, piece of cloth, but they would hang that on there and drape it on there, and it was gorgeous. And with his color capabilities, this sanctuary just looked wonderful every week. It always included all the plants and flowers into it, but it was just great. And he was always working outside this church, in the lawn. That's west side of the driveway there. That's all. I mean, he didn't do all the work, but he was the one who was the inspiration and created a lot of it and did an awful lot of work on it. The berm and the peace garden and all the plantings of trees. he was a member, or he worked for Irving's, and developed a relationship with them, where he got free trees and bushes, all kinds of plants. And he's just made this outside just wonderful. After, I guess you really wouldn't say it, after Marion died, a group of us got together with the cards. And what always got me was we would start to play a game, and Art would always say, "How do you play this game?" We played it 100 times, but he didn't know, he couldn't remember. And this is when the last couple of years when his memory was kind of bad. And we would tell him the object of the game and how to play it and so forth. And then we'd start, and he'd proceed to beat us, usually. He got to the point where he said, "We're not going to tell you how." On several trips, we went over on several trips overnight with Art and some with Mary when she was living. But it was always a joy for Carol and I when we'd get up in the morning and Art would be there and say, "Top of the morning to you," in his Irish brogue, you know. So I know I miss Mary. He missed Marion very, very much. I'm just happy that they're together again.
My name is Steve Moroniak, and I have known Art since my late teens, early 20s. And Art Gardiner means a lot to so many different people for so many different reasons. And whenever I saw Art, whether it was for practice or just coming into church on a Sunday, there was always this peace in my soul, like, you know, there's Art, you know. There's the church, there's Art. And now, even today, as I look around, I see his fingerprints and Marion's fingerprints everywhere. So whenever I walk into this church, I'll always be thinking of him without a doubt. I was asked to sing today by the Gardiner family, and I have to tell you I'm honored that you even asked me to do that. I don't feel I'm worthy, but I will give it my very best. So thank you. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, his mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. God, my Savior, has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow, the sun forbear to shine, but God, who called me to His home, I'll be forever yours, and will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
I got a microphone for you. I know that many of you want to say something about it. So I'd like to invite every one of you to share your story. Here it is your hand. Okay.
I don't go back as far as the mic does with Tony Hart, but when Kay and I moved here in 1969, March, we were looking for a church. So we found this phone book and we went to the school, Dutton School, pulled up with two little kids. And the first one to meet us was Hart. He'd come outside for a smoke. So, so we've been here ever since.
So where are you now?
Hutton.
London.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Good morning, Pastor. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
To the family. My parents are still alive, so I don't know your group. So I can't speak to that. But I know you, and I'm praying for you. To the congregation, did somebody say they couldn't hear me? Well, to the congregation and to the choir, of course you know me. My name is Victor Woods. My mother and father also sung in this church, and my mother played the piano. And piano used to be over there. And the choir used to be over there too. And I know because one day I was walking, and it was my big moment at this church to be the acolyte boy, and I pulled one of the things probably your father put up there and broke it, to my parents' chagrin. We were the first black family to ever join this church, and I was the baddest little boy to ever be in this church. So I was always in trouble, and those who know me know it. And I remember I got up the other day, and I received a phone call, and it was my vice principal. Now you have to understand my vice principal is Mr. North, and either I was being sent to his office or he was coming into my class to come get me. And I heard his familiar voice, and he said, "Victor?" I said, "Oh my God, that's my vice principal. What have I done now?" And he told me the sober news about your mother and your father, of course. And I called you on the phone and told you how sorry I was to hear it, and said that when your mother died, I sat here and didn't say anything. And I said, I need to say something now that your father has died. And she said, Victor, you should. So I want you to know very briefly that I got into all kinds of trouble. I got into the kind of trouble you don't want a kid to get into, the kind that involves the police. And it was in the newspaper. It was an embarrassment to my family. And a lot of people turned their back on my family. And then a lot of people came to my mother and father and said, we're so sorry, what can we do for you? With the exception of Mrs. Gunn, who sits in this room as well. Art and Marion Gardiner said, "What can we do for your son?" They embody what Christianity is about. They lived it. Some people drive to church, pass the problem, and then drive back out and pass the problem. Art and Marion Gardiner sought me out. They brought me to their home to garden every day. This is why I was out on bond as a little boy. They fed me every day and did that all summer long. What an appropriate song, Amazing Grace. Because Art and Marion Gardiner, your parents showed me grace. And because of that grace, I travel all over the world and speak. I thank your family for all they did for my mother, my father, what they did for me. And when I woke up this morning and I saw how dark and gloomy it was, I told my girlfriend, what a terrible day for a funeral for such great people. But then I was reminded, your father and mother were light, and they light up everything. Your parents were light, and I can only hope that when I die, that as many people have shown up to honor these great people, because your parents were great. Maybe I'll have maybe a few people to say something decent about me. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Victor. Art and Marion, they were the perfect couple. Can I get an amen? Amen. They were the perfect couple. Amen. And when they celebrated their 50th anniversary, by their example, I was inspired to pen a poem. And I'd like to share that with you. It's short. It's called One Heart. They seem to complement themselves in so many ways. And Art always told me that Marion was his better half. Him or her, she or he, who's the better half? Who has the key? Top to bottom or bottom to top? Who's in charge? Mom or pop? Who's the leader? Who lends an ear? Who carries the shoulder that brings up the rear? Who's got class? Who's got style? Who's got the warm and friendly smile? Who's doing the talking when the other one's not? Who remembers what the other forgot? Two persons joined with one heart. Two souls united, Marion and Art.
I remember meeting Art and Marion when I joined the church, and I was in the choir with both of them. We had phenomenal choir parties in their lovely home, and then we were in the same shepherd group together. And we again had phenomenal parties in their lovely home, and then we went to each other's homes. They were gracious, they were fun, they had a sense of humor. And I remember one time Art was introducing me to some new people who were visiting the church. He, instead of saying, "This is Cindy Dingwall," he said, "This is Dindy Singwall. I mean, it's Cindy Dingwall." And then he forever called me Dindy, because I had to stay. But both Art and Marion were lovely people. I enjoyed knowing them, and I do miss both of them.
The Gardiners and the Siders lived in Fairfax Village, and I had the job of setting up the Christmas hats and bows that we put on traditionally for Christmas. And we decorate the village with that, and it's really cool. It looks great. And it was my job to get those up, and I did that by simply asking for volunteers to come and join me. And we had about 15 show up to put the hats on and the bows on all of the electric lights around the village. And you will never guess who was one of the first to show up. It's about 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before Christmas, and it's cold and it's overcast and it's not very comfortable. And the first guy that showed up, of course, was Art, and I sized him up pretty well. No hat. Jacket was kind of light. And we're there for in the cold, it's maybe about 35 degrees, which is not so terribly cold, but if you're there for an hour and a half, it builds up, it gets kind of cold. And this was only about 6-7 years ago, so Art was not at the young part of his life. He was a little older, and I sized him up and I said, Art, why don't you go home and get a cup of tea? I really had to chase him home. It was silly for him to be there and to do this work and be outside. And sure enough, we got about 12 guys, 13 guys to come up. We put up all the hats and the bows. And sure enough, Art shows up a little bit to be sure the bows are nice and the hats are everything's in good shape. But I told him, please go home and finish that tea. But I thought I'd tell this story because it depicts the kind of character Art was. It just suits this event, and he was something else.
Anyone else? Kurt?
I first came to United Methodist Church here in 1972 with my parents. Art and Marion were two of the first people that we met here, and we were so impressed and so filled with the love that they shared with us and our family. And I know that Mom and Dad just absolutely loved Art and Marion, and Dad would come over at night doing something out in the lawn or out in the back here, and Dad would join in, and the two of them would just be gardening left, right, and down the middle, and just doing all kinds of wonderful things. And one particular memory that I am lucky enough to have is that we talk about his gardening and about all the things he does so quietly around the church. But he also was willing to step in and help out with some more esoteric kind of things. We had a very active youth group going, and about 10, 12 years ago, the group decided that we were going to be in the Arlington Heights 4th of July parade. And we needed somebody to help hold the float and somebody to be ambassadors for the church. And Art and Marion volunteered their convertible, which they absolutely loved, and I was so worried about something was going to happen to it, but they did a wonderful job with that. And they got on so well with all of the youth and the young people, not just from our church, but we had a couple of other churches in helping out with us. And they would just fell right in, and the youth all absolutely loved them all. And they said at the end that they were such good ambassadors for the church. And I can remember them smiling and waving to everybody all up and down the parade and just having a wonderful time of it. And what a joy that was. And that's Art and Marion. They were always full of joy, willing to pitch in wherever they needed. And we are so blessed they were part of our lives. Amen.
Pick out the types of plants. And one thing I haven't heard here, unless I missed it, what he was to me was such a gentle man and a gentleman. And that's how I got to be married.
Now we're going to sing 3 songs. All these songs Art really loved. So we're going to sing the song. But each song we're going to sing 2 verses. First one, first and second. And the next one, first and second. The last one, first and third. So we're going to sing together. I think this is one also the art we are about to sing. Just to close the walk with you. Brothers and sisters in Christ, what a great love we have received from the man, Art. Let us love each other and extend the love to others, to all the people we see and meet. The peace of God which passes all understanding keeps your heart and mind in the knowledge and love of God and His Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. The blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen. Amen.
Thank you.